I'm here to make sure that the session runs smoothly and record the session. So just to let everybody know, this is going to be an interactive session. So we want to hear from you. Introduce yourselves in the chat. Let us know where you're from. And as I said, we will record this session. Ben will take it away in a minute. We'll just give it a minute or two to make sure that we have everybody in the session before we get started. Hi, Joanna. Hi, Andrew. Nice to hear from you. A couple more people coming in now.
Hello, folks.
Right, cool. I think I'll just let a couple more in then, Ben. So just for those people who've just arrived, I'm going to be recording the session, but it is an interactive session. So we'd lovely to be able to see and hear from a few people. But be aware that it is going to be recorded for those people that couldn't make the session at this time. And I'll hand over to you, Ben.
Hello. Welcome to the session on. Hi, Lena. It's so nice to see some friendly names and some familiar faces out there. Speaking of faces, it would be ace if I could see some smiley faces. That makes life easier for me as a facilitator. Thank you very much, people. That's amazing. Really appreciate that. So we've got a mix of folks from colleges and universities. Welcome to my kitchen. So my name's Ben. I work with the National Society of Apprentices and have done for about 10 years. Well, worked at NUS for a little bit doing kind of course rep stuff. And before working with the National Society, I worked as a student liaison officer, LVP, college staff member for an FE college in the south of England. This is and one of the things that I have been kind of noticing about life in Zoom is that I am not a digital native, I'm a digital explorer, finding out all of these weird and wonderful things. We've been testing out some stuff with the National Society, and so we're going to go and have a tour through Mentimeter later on, which is one of my new favorite things, and I'm going to make you play some games and talk to me because that's the plan. Is that a wince, Harry? Sorry. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. Don't worry. The games will be fine. I've been working with students in Ireland this week, and I made them play some Boal theatre games on Zoom. Don't worry. I'm not going to make you play theatre games or pretend to be a fish on a video Zoom that's being recorded. So that's not the game. We're going to play some games and talk about apprenticeships. Lovely. So, if you could grab a second device, a phone, that would be really handy because that's what we're going to use to run the activity. And it's one of the ways that we're going to get you to kind of interact with the kind of text and information. So if you could go on to Menti and And it should. Oh, see, definitely an explorer, not a natural. There we go. Welcome to the world of apprenticeships. This is where I live, and it's great to see you all here. So, can you give us a wave if you are into the Mentimeter? Can you see that? And can you see it on your phones? Yeah? Oh. What's the code? The code, the code, the code. Let's find us a code.
It was on the previous slide, Ben. Whatever you did when you first clicked onto it, it was at top.
Okay. Has it gone again?
It was on the one before this. What did you click on when you first said about it? Was it on your slide? The original slide?
I'm really sorry about this, peeps. Oh, fab. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Joe. I forgot to write it down. Are we all in? In. Ricky's in. Brilliant. Ah, that makes me happy. Right, so I will just write that down. Write the code down before you start a presentation. Fantastic. Cool. So, first thing that I'm going to talk to you about is buses. This is a very important bus for the National Society, because this bus goes from where we started, which was in an office in Birmingham in 2013. It was the first time we got the National Society together, and you can catch this bus from just outside of that office, and it goes to Coventry, and then you have to walk across the car park outside of the bus station, and that gets you to the Coventry Student Union, Coventry University Student Union, which is where we really ought to be, but unfortunately, Corona has kept us away. And one of the first things that Apprentices talked about was public transport and the cost of public transport. And the National Society has, over the last kind of 8 years or so, spent its time traveling around the country, talking to apprentices about their experience of their education and their work and community, and supporting them to be able to talk to decision makers about their experience. Since 2013, apprentices have made sure that they can receive sick pay. They have pushed Apprentice Voice up the agenda to make sure that they can participate in the Institute Apprenticeship Panel. That's for apprentices in England. Sorry, Alina, sorry, Andrew, and anybody else from not England. Those things do not exist in the devolved administrations yet. We've worked on ensuring that apprentices are entitled to 20% off the job training Again, that's England and Wales. That doesn't exist for apprentices in Scotland yet. We've seen increases in both the minimum apprenticeship pay and average apprenticeship pay. And congratulations, you people are the first people in the student movement to find out that we, because it only happened yesterday, that we have had quite a win that we're really excited about on quality education. So Investors and People have launched a We Invest in Apprenticeships pilot. We've been working with them and the trade unions for 2.5 years to ensure that there is a way for apprentices to be able to differentiate between an apprenticeship which is legal and an apprenticeship which is actually excellent. And at the moment, the way that apprentices are able to do that is to look at the level of an apprenticeship and to look at pay. However, we know from talking to apprentices that some apprenticeships on £4.15 are excellent, and some apprenticeships on £10 an hour are rubbish. So actually giving apprentices, and we're really excited about this, like it's nerdy, it's HR stuff, but I'm really excited about the fact that in future, apprentices will be able to differentiate between what's good and what's excellent. And allowing apprentices to make those choices is really important. And if you or your institutions would be interested in being part of that pilot, give me a shout. My contact details will be at the end. Jamie, a bunch of people have come in. Could you, sorry, I've just realized that a bunch of people have come in through the waiting room. Could you help them get into the Menti?
Yeah, I'm just sending them a message now.
Oh, amazing.
But the code is on the top of your slide now, where we couldn't see it before.
Couldn't see it on the first one.
So if you go to menti.com and then use that code.
Brilliant. Fab. So quality education, and again on care leavers. So one of the things that apprentices have spoken to us about particularly over the last 4 or 5 years, was making sure that care leavers had access to apprenticeships, because care leavers themselves were talking about apprenticeships being really important, but we're finding it a real struggle. And many people will have many views about the Conservative governments over the last little while, but one of the best things that they have done is really open up apprenticeships for care leavers, and we spent a long time in 2017, 2018 talking to them about the experience of care leavers, and they introduced a whole bunch of support for care leavers following those discussions, and embedded those into the kind of the funding arrangements that apprentices would receive. So that was our journey to get here. Welcome. This is my big block of text. This is what the UK government says an apprenticeship is. And I will not give you enough time to read that because it's really, really dull. Fortunately, I have given you a précis. Oops. An apprenticeship needs an occupation. It needs to be training for a career and not just a job. So, and that's really important when we're talking about quality and thinking about what roles people will be going into after their apprenticeship. It needs to have training. And there needs to be an agreed partnership between both the institution, like the educational institution, the employer, and the apprentice. And that's one of the few things which is absolutely the same regardless of whereabouts in the United Kingdom we are talking about. And most of the problems that we identify when apprentices are talking to us come from a lack of understanding about that partnership, or a disagreement about what that partnership means in practice. So getting those agreements right at the beginning is really important. And finally, it's a job. Apprentices are entitled to the apprentice minimum wage if they are under 19 and or are in the first year of their apprenticeship. Very few degree apprentices are paid the apprentice minimum wage of £4.15 an hour, but they do exist. Most degree apprentices are paid much more, and the details about kind of exactly how much apprentices are paid at level 6 degree or graduate apprenticeships are available on the apprentice pay survey, the data of which came out in January. And if you want all of the nerdy details about that, drop me an email. I am full of nerdy detail about apprenticeship policy. So that's what an apprenticeship is. And in practice, the average apprentice is a woman called Hannah from Stoke doing health and social care. And that doesn't really fit with our image of what an apprentice is. And quite a lot of the things that we have in our head about what an apprentice is just isn't right. So get rid of it and start thinking about how we can kind of expand our understanding of what an apprentice is. Oh yes, one of my favorite things to talk about. Not only am I able to do geeky, nerdy apprenticeship data facts, but also, I'm sorry, this is just a better film than the other ones. So back in the 1980s, you definitely were not allowed to cross the streams. So student unions over here, talking about education, and trade unions over here, talking about work. Don't cross the streams because then bad things will happen. Fortunately, a couple of years ago, new Ghostbusters turned up who told us that that was rubbish. And particularly for your degree apprentices, one of the most important things that you can do is to find out who the apprentices are in terms of like what professions they are in, and speak to the trade unions that represent them at work. And begin to think about how together we can, as the student movement and the trade union movement, engage in both workplace and academic representation. Because there are spaces where those two intersect. But student union, you have a degree or graduate apprentice, of course, you are interested in how those students can access your democracy. Health and safety issue in the workplace. Yep, that's definitely a trade union thing. Fitness to practice. Is that an academic thing? Or is that a workplace thing? And actually what we need to do is we need to cross those streams of both student union and trade union representation to try and create and understand how we are going to best support our degree apprentices. Because one of the things that was in that kind of description of what an apprenticeship is it's a job and it's an education. And the law doesn't differentiate between being at work time and being at university or college time. They are always learners and always workers. So we need to speak with the trade unions who represent apprentices in their workplaces to figure out and understand what's best for our shared members. If you agree with me on Ghostbusters, can you react by giving me a thumbs up, please? Fab. Okay. Got, that's not very many. Okay, Jamie, like you're in the good book, Jamie. Nice one. Thank you very much. Okay, so it's just a quick kind of overview. In 2019, I spoke to 1,000 apprentices. About 10% of those were levels 4, 5, and 6, so higher and degree level apprentices, graduate level apprentices for viewers in Scotland. And last year they talked about pay, cost of living, quality work, and quality education. And these are things which are common for apprentices to be talking about, regardless of what level or what part of the country, or frankly, which part of Europe they live in, because we do quite a lot of work with the European Apprentice Network. And these are things that apprentices will talk about. And it doesn't matter if they are barbers or brain surgeons. These are the things that they talk about and are not interested in. So if you need a shortcut to, this is something that we in my student union should talk about to our apprentices, this is a pretty good guess. Okay, now, grab your phone. This is the first time you get to play with your phone. Do you agree or disagree that apprentices should be paid the living wage? Ah, nice one. Got 4 people giving it a go. On. Amazing. Thank you very much. So, congratulations. This is broadly, you agree with apprentices. So, on the living wage one, apprentices last year asked us to talk about apprenticeship pay, and that £4.15 was not enough to live on. And we'll talk about the living wage right at the end, where things that you can do, with things that you can do. Spending a day a week in training on average. Now, this is something that is common to apprenticeship programs around Europe, is having at least 20% of your time spent on training and learning, and the recognition that an apprenticeship isn't just about work. Obviously, that doesn't need to be like 1 day a week. It could be kind of set up in blocks, and there's some really excellent examples of practice. Aston do a really interesting block release degree apprenticeship where apprentices from companies come in and basically take over the university from the end of June until the middle of August, and they get their teaching in a block. Absolutely. But there is face-to-face engagement and teaching. And one of the things that apprentices have been articulate about particularly over the last month or so, is that if blended learning should end for school students and for university students as soon as possible, then it shouldn't be normal practice for apprentices. And finally, on public transport, all of the governments in the UK, Northern Ireland, Wales, Scotland and England have talked about giving apprentices a discount on public transport, and they just don't do it. And it gets both me and the apprentices really grumpy. Sweet. So I'm giving Jamie a wave. This is the moment. Awesome. So one of the things that that we do with the National Society, and this is an activity that works to get apprentices, regardless of whether they've engaged with student voice and democracy before, thinking about what they think about their apprenticeships. And one of the things that we've noticed with apprentices from level 2 to 6 is they haven't been involved with student voice before. They haven't been asked what they think is important. And we need to start off slow and gentle, or we'll scare them off. So we talk about ideas and work and people rather than policies and leadership and democracy. So this is one of the ways that we do that. On your phones, you'll be, in the next slide, you'll be given a bunch of options, how you would spend your 100 Starbursts, because in pre-corona times, I used to spend £500 a year buying Starbursts or Opal Fruits to give people, and that they would spend on these different topics. So we're going to pop you into groups of about 5, 4 or 5. Yeah, that's grand. I'd like you to spend your Starburst on your phone and then have a quick chat, and we'll leave you in your groups for 4 minutes, maybe 5. Okay, off you go.
Hi, Christy. You've just joined whilst the others in the session are in breakout rooms. So if you Ben's using a tool called Menti, so you can download. Well, no, you don't even need to download. You just need to go onto another screen, maybe on your phone, and go to menti.com, and then join with a code. I'll put it in the chat now, and then hopefully when everybody comes back in a couple of minutes, it's about 2 or 3 minutes left. You'll be able to pick up and join the conversation from there. I'll put it in the chat for you now. Hey Ben, we just had somebody new join, so I've posted up the Menti links for them to try and join in again.
Nice.
The breakout rooms look like they're going to close automatically in 50 seconds.
Awesome.
Is that going to be all right? Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great timing. Yeah, the chat's going all right. This is a nice size group. I'm happy with this.
Yeah. Hi, Katie. You've just joined as well. If on your phone, in the chat, you might be able to see, if you go to menti.com and use the code, I'll post it again just in case you can't see it. Or Ben's beat me to it. You'll be able to join in and pick up the session from where we've got to currently. Everyone's just coming back from a breakout room.
Fab, welcome back, people. So we've got 10 people having spent their digital starbursts. Thank you very much. Broadly, that's what a room of apprentices would say as well. And so we use that to get apprentices to begin to identify the things that are important to them, in order for them to kind of frame what is possible for them to interact with the National Society or their student union about. I'm going to pick on Andrew because we have met before, and I think that it would be mean to pick on Tim because we've only seen each other for 35 minutes. Andrew, can you unmute yourself?
Yes, hello.
Hello. How would you change the world?
How would I change the world? Oh,
Yeah.
that's everyone would get a basic income. The country borders, I think, are very much a thing.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Now, and I'm really sorry, but particularly for putting you on the spot and asking you a really broad and wide question that I didn't give you any indication about what the correct answer might be. And because apprentices, including degree apprentices, have not encountered or been part of voice activity, we need to begin to frame the conversations right at the beginning with apprentices in a much, much more structured manner than we might with student activists from another environment. And so by giving people 7 options. Out of these 7 things, which do you think is most important? It's much more directive than perhaps we are in other parts of the student movement, and it's not where we want to finish, but it seems to make accessing student voice simpler and easier for people who haven't experienced it in the past. And in the little group that I was in, we talked a little bit about when we're doing these activities face to face, we do them with Starburst because they are vegan, vegetarian, halal, and kosher, which means that most of the apprentices that we engage with are able to eat them after we have used them for an activity. They're also wrapped, which means we can move them around. Obviously, Coco Corona is going to change that for a little bit, and that's going to save me some budget on buying Starburst/Opal Fruits. But frankly, I would prefer to be buying Starburst rather than saving the money. Bam. So your top issues, we've talked about that. I'm going to skip that one. Right. So back in, so I'm going to skip those slides because
sorry, Ben, we can't see your slides on the Zoom call anymore. Just to let you know.
Thank you very much. Share screen. Have we got it back? Fantastic. So if you could go back to your phones. Tim, can you see the degree apprentices during COVID slide on, and can you see it on your phone? Fantastic. So back in May and June, the National Society ran a survey with degree apprentices and apprentices around the UK, talking to them about the issues that they were worried about during COVID, and these were the ones that came up. Have a quick guess about what order they put things in. Nice. Amazing. So, yeah, so, it's getting tight at the top between mental health and communication with the institution. It's actually a dead tie between mental health and communication with the university. 50% of apprentices talked about COVID having had a negative impact on their mental health and well-being, and half of apprentices also talked about the fact that the communication from their college, training provider, or university, and there wasn't any difference in the quality of communication from colleges, universities, or training providers. They said that they had not had enough communication from their training provider. This is half of apprentices, which is pretty bad. 60% of apprentices said that they had less than 2 hours space to work or learn from home. And 20% of apprentices said that they didn't have the IT equipment or Wi-Fi to be able to take part in learning. Now, these are interesting things to know, but they also can help inform us about what it is that our institutions can be doing and what we as student unions can be doing to support distance and work-based learners like apprentices. And I will just put words into your mouth. Oops. So these are the things that I think it would be useful for your institutions and for your student unions to consider. Can apprentices access your mental health support? If apprentices are on campus infrequently and are not physically in your spaces very often, when they are, is that the time that your mental health support and counselling is available? Can apprentices access your mental health support digitally, and do you have capacity within your institution or your training institution or your student union to be able to deliver that to apprentices online? Can you tell what your voter participation is like amongst apprentices? Because if they aren't voting, the problem, from the National Society's point of view, the problem is with the process and not with the apprentices. And finally, have you considered about the hidden course costs for your apprentices? Over the last 10 years, student unions have done excellent and amazing things, winning for students around hidden course costs. But degree apprentices in particular are much newer than those campaigns. And so we are seeing apprentices talk about the cost of equipment that is required for their courses being either a barrier to participation or making life a real struggle, particularly in the first 6 months of an apprenticeship. The Menti has a space for questions, but as we're quite a small group, I'm not going to use that facility. I'm going to come back to the Zoom call, and then we can take some questions, do some Q&A as a group. Okay, folks. Welcome to the wonderful world of apprentices. I have talked at you for ages and ages. Have we got any questions about the stuff that I've said, about the activities, or some of the issues that apprentices have talked about? If you don't feel brave and you don't want to say it out loud, please feel free to drop a message in the chat.
I'll just say a quick thing if that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually haven't thought about how talking about from the student voice and policy and procedure would be kind of a barrier to entry, because it is one of those things I've never thought about it like that. So it's definitely food for thought on how we can actually engage our apprentices, especially as that's part of our operational plan for this year.
Cool, thanks. Okay, I will ask the question in a slightly different way. How many of you know how many apprentices that there are in your institution? Yeah? Forth Valley? Kind of a maybe nod from Worcester. Nice one. Yeah. Okay. Do any SUs have a specific officer or SAB for apprenticeships? Yes. Well, sort of. Some colleges have a part-time officer for apprenticeships and apprentices. Cheers, spotted the hand up, Elena. Two organisations in the UK have an apprentice SAB, but neither of those are colleges. So White Hat Training in London, who deliver levels 3 to 5 apprenticeships, have an apprentice representative, and ACT Training, who deliver levels 2 to 4 in and around Cardiff and South Wales, have an apprentice SAB. But so far, I am unaware of any NUS member who any long-standing student union in a college or university that has an apprentice officer. We chatted at the National Society about whether, as part of our leadership structure, we wanted that. And the apprentices said, no, we've got a job, thanks. We don't want a SAB. So we have a leadership team of about 30 apprentices. I have a committee that I have to work for 30 people. But it means that lots of apprentices are able to put in 2, 3, 4 hours a week rather than one person taking responsibility. So a part-time officer role is a possibility. I think sometimes in the student movement, we make the mistake of thinking that a SAB is the definition of success, particularly in FE. And I think where it comes to apprentices, this might not be the answer. Does that answer your question, Sally? Well, thank you for having a question. Much appreciated. Cat, New College, Durham, you have a lot. Well, if you have a lot of apprentices, then at the National Society, we'd be really happy to support you to develop apprentice voice in your institutions. We are working on developing online activities for the period that we can't kind of physically come and speak to apprentices, but that we'd be really keen to support you both digitally and in future in person to both develop your own apprentice voice and also connect to apprentice voice at the National Society and the European Apprentice Network. Yeah. Whoa, it's all coming now. So apprentice reps. So Forth Valley have had apprentice reps for a while, and Sally, if you are unfamiliar with that, then I would suggest getting in touch with Elena and Andrew. They are worth talking to. These people are good people to talk to about apprentice representatives. And in one of my other presentations, come up as being these are people thinking interesting things. And yeah, I mean, the course rep system. Having said that, Forth Valley do good course reps for apprentice voice. It's pretty much the only place that I've seen it working. It's because the amount of time that apprentices are interacting with our institutions is really, really limited, and course rep systems take a really long time to function. So you engage so you become a rep in September, you go to a meeting in October, and you'll get feedback from that meeting in January. Now, if you're only in 1 day a week on average, the chances of you being in on the first day to get recruited and for the first meeting to talk about it and at the meeting in January is relatively low. So it takes so people miss out on one of those interactions and interventions. So it's 6 months before they hear back about the way that enrollment worked, by which time like the moment's gone and people don't care. We're also often working with teaching staff who have traditionally had less interaction with student voice and student unions. So we need to do the kind of relationship building with those teaching staff. Simon, LTSU, is that Leeds? Simon?
Yeah, Leeds Trinity.
Cool. Communication or time to / desire to engage. Yes, and Tim, we struggle with that. Well, one of the things that we've found is that quite often student unions are talking about things that apprentices don't care about. And that is as true of NUS as anywhere else, perhaps more so. One of the things that we know that every apprentice has made a proactive choice about is work, because it is more difficult to get an apprenticeship studying a particular course at a particular level than it is to get access to full-time education doing the same qualification, because you have to have all of the same entry requirements for the education, and also you need to persuade an employer to pay for you to do the job. And so we know that all apprentices, regardless of which apprenticeship or where they are, they've all made a proactive choice about work and learning. So where student unions are able to communicate about, where we're able to deliver stuff that is connected, that is easily connected to work, then it is more attractive. Pubs and sports clubs, it's not a thing that apprentices talk to us about. Yeah, so thanks for that input, Alina. It's really useful to talking about trade unions, both in terms of kind of the working with trade unions can give you some respect and credibility, both with apprentices themselves and also with the teaching staff. Yeah, and kind of just checking in on what Kat was saying about thinking about things which aren't course rep systems. I think having shorter engagements is worth trying. Did you have anything else to add there, Simon?
Sorry, I'll just rude not to see the person you're speaking
to.
to.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just literally on the sofa, so probably not video central, but needs must. I don't know, I guess it's just the fact that their perspective is transactional. And so when they have an issue, they don't come to us, they go to the university. And so a lot of it's education, but we don't tend to get a hold of them very much. So, and then they're in a very short period of time. So we've got a very small window to have that education, and they're just being given lots of information. And it's that classic, well, what's the union for me? I've got my job, I've got this, I only pay, this is like a small proportion of my experience, and therefore it's got a small proportion of my time, and you're trying to give me stuff that I don't care about. So as much as we talk about the stuff they might care about, it's very difficult to get past that transactional interaction.
Yeah, so I would point out that the mental health stuff and access to mental. So I've had conversations like that with institutions who've said no. Well, apprentices that aren't interested. Actually, is your mental health support available when apprentices can access it? And that I would kind of go and have a look and point at one of the activities that I think it was Strathclyde did. So they have a lot of engineering graduate apprentices at Strathclyde, and were really struggling because Strathclyde's quite a campaigny student association in Scotland, which was really, really falling flat with their apprentices, and the institution was pushing them to engage with apprentices. And so what they did was arrange visiting speakers in the same way that a club or society might kind of invite a speaker on a particular topic, because it connects with work, and the apprentices were able to say to their employers, so somebody who has designed this bridge is coming to speak to us, and they were able to talk to their employer about the fact that it was connected to their work. They could see a professional value for it, and so they came and listened to a talk. And as a students' association, Strathclyde had the organisational capacity and clout to be able to invite somebody who an individual apprentice wouldn't have access to. So they were providing the thing that the apprentice found valuable. Around the outside of that, they had tea, coffee, fruit, chats, surveys on pieces of paper, like officers went, and so they provided their apprentices with something useful and then built relationships around that.
Thank you.
Thanks. We are almost out of time. Anybody else got one last? Well, in that case, I would just say thank you very much for coming and playing some games and talking about apprenticeships. Much appreciated. I will drop my contact in the bottom of the chat. If you've got any questions, drop us a line. Really keen to carry on talking about Starburst and Ghostbusters and apprenticeship policy. Sorry, Andrew.